Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and this is Draft Eve. 24 hours, a little more than 24 hours before the 2026 NFL Draft kicks off. I thought this is the perfect time to jump on here, talk to the folks about what is going to happen or what we anticipate happening over draft weekend. Let me first start with some thoughts on the draft and this draft in general. There's been a lot of conversation about the draft, and you hear some people say, oh, this is a terrible draft. This draft doesn't have any notable names. There are not any superstars and all of that. And I got to tell you, look, nothing could be further from the truth. What this draft doesn't have is they don't have star quarterbacks, meaning multiple star quarterbacks in the draft class. You have one guy that is going to be a first-round pick in Fernando Mendoza. He's certified to be the number one overall pick. And then you have a bunch of question marks about the rest of the QB class. Ty Simpson, people want to know, will he be a first-round pick? There's been late buzz about Carson Beck somewhere popping in this mix, maybe in the first round, somewhere in the second round. But what we don't have is when we have an exciting draft, typically, we don't have a lot of quarterbacks that are going to go in the top five. But what we do have are a lot of players that are elite players at what we call non-premium positions. So whether that is Jeremiah Love, a running back, whether you talk about Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, off-ball linebacker, safety, we have those guys. We have offensive linemen that are worthy of being top 10 selections, but they play right tackle instead of left tackle when we talk about Spencer Fano and Francis Manoa, respectively. It's just a different draft, and what we have to get comfortable with as it relates to this weekend is knowing that some of the traditional things that we've held true to about positional value, about premium positions and those things, we're going to have to throw them out the window. And the teams that are going to crush it in this draft are the ones that are going to draft the best player available. Now, I need to make sure I can give a clear definition of best player available, meaning a player that has star qualities, a player that is an elite player at his position, a player that has the prototypical traits, size, strength, tools, athleticism, all those things, to be a guy that can be a top five player at his position in this league very quickly in his career. What decision makers have to do is they have to identify that cluster of players, and they got to fish from that pond. And if you do that, your team is going to be more successful than the other teams that are reaching and trying to draft based on need. Take the best players, regardless of whether it gives you a surplus at the position, because you can always auction those things off and get back what you want. We're going to open this up. We're going to have a bunch of questions. I'm going to mix in some of my thoughts. We can get some analysis. We're going to shoot some notable kudos to our sponsors and those things. But let's start this out right now. Anthony Barrett, 4001. He comes in and he says, hey, Bucky, do you think my Titans view Sonny Styles as a potential Fred Warner of their defense if he's available at 4? Yes, yes, yes. And in fact, one of the notes that I had coming into this was to talk about Tennessee and a decision that could be on the horizon between Arville Reese, Sonny Styles, and Jeremiah Love. And as much as we've talked about in the run-up to the draft, hey, let's make sure we do things for Cam Ward. Robert Saleh coming over, defensive-minded coach who is going to call the defense in Tennessee in a division that is loaded with quality defense. Think about the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to make sure that their defense can play rock'em sock'em robots with everybody. Sonny Styles will give them that kind of player because he is comparable to Fred Warner as a player. When you look at him and you look at his size, you look at what he can do in the middle of the field, he is very similar to what Robert Saleh had with Fred Warner. Fred Warner's length, his size, his athleticism, his ability to blitz, but also cover, created problems over the middle of the field for opponents. It is easy to say that Robert Saleh is going to see what Fred Warner was able to do within his scheme and project that out on Sonny Styles and say that, hey, Sonny Styles could be the difference maker for us. And what I will say about Sonny Styles is he's a uniquely gifted player. He is someone that can do the sideline to sideline things. He can play in the slot like he did as a former safety. He can come downhill and blitz like he did 2 seasons ago when he was very impactful as a rusher. To me, there's star quality to Sonny Styles and what he can do in that defense. I would not be surprised if that was the play for the Tennessee Titans. If he is available and on the board, Robert Saleh going to get his new version of Fred Warner. Next, we have Sports Fan 2026. What team has the most pressure to draft well in the first round? Here's what I tell you. Every team is under pressure to make sure they get it right in the first round. The best teams nail their first round picks. But when you have multiple picks in the first round, there's a little added pressure on you. So that means New York Giants having 2 picks. There's a lot of pressure on them to get it right because they have 2 within the top 10. In the top 10, we're talking about blue chip players. Those players should be Pro Bowl players, all pro players, even future gold jacket players, Hall of Famers. The Jets have a tremendous amount of pressure on them because they have 2 out of the elite group of prospects. They need to nail it. Now, the thing that adds to the pressure is the last time they had 2 was a few years ago when they took Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. Kayvon Thibodeau has been okay. Evan Neal has been a disappointment. This time around, they cannot have that. So any combination of players, whether it's offense, defense, a mix of both, they have to nail it. Caleb Downs and Jordan Tyson, whether it's Jeremiah Love and Jordan Tyson, Jeremiah Love and Caleb Downs, whatever that combination is, these players have to hit and they have to be effective for them. But they're not the only one. The Dallas Cowboys fall into that conversation when you think about having 12 and 20, need to fix the defense. Do they go with an edge rusher and a cornerback? Do they go with 2 DBs to fix the safety and the corner position? Are they talking about a combination of Dylan Thieneman and Colton Hood, or Dylan Thieneman and Avion Terrell? Maybe there's a scenario where you look up and it's Ruben Bain sitting at 12, and then they come back and get a corner and do the take. They've already said they're not going to do the redshirt thing, the injury thing, so that throws Jamar McCoy out. But who's the other combination of players that they could fit to fix this defense? And if they're feeling frisky, do they move up into the top 10 to get the player that they want? Maybe an Arville Reese, because they're trying to replace what went out the door when they traded away Micah Parsons. Lots of options for the Cowboys, but they're feeling the pinch because they have 2 picks in the first round. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs, who are picking in the top 10 and then at the bottom of the first round. At 9, do they go and address the right tackle position, Francis Mauanoa, Spencer Fano? Do they go and get a playmaker that could eventually replace Travis Kelce, like a Kenyon Sadiq? Do they get a wide receiver? Say Carnell Tate drops. Do they take him so they can put him with Xavier Worthy and Rasheed Rice and others? How do they put this together? And then at the bottom of the round, what are we looking at? Are we looking at DBs? Are we thinking about Colton Hood or Chris Johnson being there? Or are we thinking about the opportunity to take a right tackle that could be in play, like a Max Ahanachor? Lots of options, a lot of range between the Kansas City Chiefs picks, but you want to make sure that you nail both of them, because we talk in this league, it's about getting it right on day one. Your first rounders have to make plays. And we can talk about, are you trying to hit home runs or are you trying to hit doubles? Regardless of your approach, you got to nail the pick. That leads me to the Cleveland Browns, who are sitting at 6 and 24. They have a tough task because they have to figure out, are we trying to build this up for Shadur Sanders / Deshaun Watson and give them a playmaker on the perimeter? Are we trying to take a long-range view where we get an offensive tackle? We talked about Mauanoa and Fano. Do we solidify the front line in that regard? Do we come back in 24 and then find a playmaker or a pass catcher there? What I would say in those scenarios, it's going to be harder to find a true number 1 receiver at the bottom of the first round. It is also going to be harder to find a franchise caliber tackle at the bottom of the first round. Well, the Browns have to get together, Andrew Berry and Todd Monken, and figure out what is the best plan of action for 3 years down the road. Who can we get to come in here and really jumpstart this and help us get going? Regardless, we talk about teams having pressure. To me, the teams with multiple picks are the ones that certainly have all of the pressure. Let's go next. Carm wanted Stroud. Hi, Bucky, Bands fan here. We need a starting safety and versatile players on defense. I love Stokes, but the age is an issue. Should we target him or go for Scott or Kilgore in the secondary? Really good question about the Bears, and really good question because they lost a couple guys in the secondary. And when you think about their ability to turn the ball over, a lot of it was due to the safeties making plays. Kevin Byard, I think, had 8 interceptions. Got a lot of production from him. He made a ton of plays. He was active and around it. So you want to find people that can do it. Stokes is a name that has really been getting a lot of buzz of late. There are a lot of people that are talking about him, maybe even sneaking into the back end of the first round. What's interesting to me is the conversation that was being had early in the process when people were talking about EMW, meaning Emanuel, McNeel, Warren. Would he be possibly in play for the Chicago Bears at that pick? Could be in range for the Toledo standout, but the Bears not only have to figure that out, the defense side of the ball. Do they need another pass rusher? Do they need someone that can hunt? Do they need someone on the inside? Early in the process, we talked about Peter Woods. We talked about Caleb Banks. It now seems like their stock is slipped a little bit where they may be top of the second round guys as opposed to first rounders. The Bears also have to make a decision about offensive line. Is there someone on the offensive line that they can look to maybe fill a void that is going to come open in 2027? That can be in place. So keep an eye on the offensive line. But yes, Stokes is maybe going to be in play. He's one of the dark horse names that you're beginning to hear buzz as we get closer to the draft. So I would keep an eye on him. Also, talk about Keontae Scott from Miami. Excellent player, outstanding, love him, one of my favorites when it comes to being able to play in the slot and hit, run, and cover and do the things that he was able to do for the Hurricanes. He is going to be a great get. I anticipate him coming off the board on day 2. Second or third round should be his sweet spot. Anthony Barrett, 4001. Another question. One more question. How do you view Harold Perkins Jr.'s draft range as well as EMW, Emanuel, McNeel, Warren? I just talked about EMW being a first-round pick. The Bears been in play for EMW. I'm thinking once we get to 18, the Minnesota Vikings, 19, the Carolina Panthers. We can even talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. We can talk about the Bears, as we talked about, at 25. 18 to 32, early second round should be the range for Emanuel, McNeel, Warren. Harold Perkins is a tricky one because I would view Harold Perkins as a day 3 pick, just because that's where your developmental players go. That's where your players who have redeeming qualities but maybe inconsistent production and performance, that's where they go. Harold Perkins is a guy that early in his career at LSU, man, he was a standout player. People were talking about him, celebrating him like he was going to be a top 10 pick. Didn't turn out that way. But when you see him run, you see the explosiveness, you see what he could be in terms of just the athlete. To me, he's a 4th-round pick. He is someone that teams are going to take a flyer on, try and put him in a position where he could lean into that athleticism and eventually find his way onto the field in a consistent rotation. But a really intriguing prospect because the athleticism pops, but the production has been inconsistent throughout his career. Carm wanted Stroud. What are you hearing about Jamar McCoy? Is he making it to the second round? Man, really interesting. The Tennessee corner has all of the elite traits that defensive back coaches covet. Now, he is more of a man-to-man corner as opposed to a zone corner, arguably the best press corner in the draft. When he puts his hands on you, he's physical. He plays in your hip pocket. He makes things very, very challenging for wide receivers because he has to he has really a dog mentality, but he has refined skills, which is what you want. The issue that you have is he didn't play last season. He had a season-ending injury, missed the entire year, just showed up for workouts, and there's some concern that maybe there's some more work that needs to be done on that knee. If that is true and the medical things have popped up, he's going to fall out of the first round and into the second round. A lot of his status and draft stock depends on what the medical people have said, and every team has a different medical opinion. So he is kind of subject to the wishes of the doctors and the trainers when it comes to how they believe he'll get back on the field and what they expect him to look like when he does return to action full time. Tide Talk Live. Will Kaden, Proctor, and Ty Simpson be selected in the first round? P.S. We are a fellow Believe Network show. All right. Shout out Tide Talk Live. Maybe we can pop on and exchange some two ways. So we'll see if we can get that together. But Kaden Proctor, for me, is absolutely a lock to be a first-round pick. And it wasn't always pretty. It was really ugly, particularly the Florida State game to start the year. But, man, he got much better as he began to control his weight and as he settled in with his technique. The big thing for Proctor is going to be which one is going to show up at the facility. When he has an opportunity in the pros, is he going to have enough discipline to make sure that he keeps his weight right, that he's fit, he's ready, he's disciplined, he's locked in to do those things. there is no doubt that he has premier talent. He has top 10 talent at a position. You don't see guys at his size that can move around and do the things that he does. I mean, look, he's taking wildcat quarterback snaps. He's catching bubble screens. He's making plays with the ball in his hands, which you're not supposed to do at his size. But playing the position of left tackle, he has it. He has to do it consistently. That said, in a draft that you don't have many left tackle prospects at the top of the board, you're talking about Caden Proctor. You're talking about Caleb Lemieux from Utah. Those are your natural left tackles. You're projecting the other guys, Monroe Freeling and some others, but those are the guys. He's going to be at the top of the market when it comes to left tackle. His sweet spot should be right when we get to that row, like 14, actually 13, the LA Rams, because the LA Rams could be in play for a tackle. They need one on the right side, but maybe they could view him going over to that other side. So you have him. You have Baltimore Ravens at 14. You have the Detroit Lions at 17. And then after that, I mean, we can just talk about them. 19 to the Panthers, 21 the Steelers. Chargers could use a guard, an interior player. 24, we got the Browns again. We have the Houston Texans somewhere in there, like 28. Like, so there are a ton of teams that need it. San Francisco 49ers. So I'm pretty confident Caden Proctor is coming off the board as a first-round pick because he's certainly worthy of being in that mix. Ty Simpson, he's the tricky one. And the reason why he's tricky is because Ty Simpson is a guy that has all the traits that you look for when you're watching tape on a young quarterback. Man, throwing mechanics, flawless, footwork, flawless, can process and get to the backside of his reads. You see him go 1-2 on the front side, spin back, come to the third option, make the check down and do it. You can tell he's the son of a coach because it is easy to him from a cerebral standpoint. When it comes to the negatives about him, inexperience, talk about 15 starts, just, man, the list of players that have had a small amount of starts that first rounders that have been successful, and not many. Cam Newton defied the odds. He's had a very, very successful career as someone who only had 13, 14 starts. You look at the other guys, from Anthony Richardson to Mitchell Trubisky to Dwayne Haskins, didn't really work out well for them because they had fewer than 15 starts. You knock it up a notch. Mark Sanchez had 16 starts. You had Trey Lance with 17 starts. It is hard to be great in this league when you're inexperienced. And as much as we want to say, hey, you have a red shirt, you'll have plenty of time to develop. When you get into the league, the clock is ticking. And people don't have a lot of patience to wait for young guys to develop. Ty Simpson needs to go to a situation where there's a veteran quarterback and he's afforded the time without the pressure that comes with it, meaning he can develop without being on the field in a critical moment. He can develop without being tasked with winning. He can work on his game and know that, hey, I'm just working on my game and I don't have to worry if the results are going to impact the long-term plan. That said, the teams that are being associated with him, the Arizona Cardinals, they can't afford him that kind of time and opportunity because they need a right now coach. They need a right now quarterback where they can get it and kind of find a way to get out the mud in a division that's very, very difficult. So I think Ty Simpson is going to have a chance to come off the board bottom of the first round, but really the sweet spot is the second round. And unfortunately for him, most teams pick their quarterbacks in the first or the third round. It's rare for a team to take a flyer on a second round pick because whoever you take in the second, you might as well treat him like you took him in the first because there's going to be expectation that he is going to play well right away and do it. And I just don't know if Ty Simpson is going to be ready for that when it comes to it. Next question. While someone actually 10. That's however you want to anticipate. That's how I interpret what that is with all those letters. Is Kaden McDonald a reach for the Giants at 10? Yes. You don't take a nose tackle in the top 10. If you're going to take a defensive tackle, then it's going to be about pass rusher, wrecking shop, wreaking havoc on the opponent by being able to get it done. I love Caden McDaniel, but I see him as a guy that is probably the value is in the 20s because he's going to be a starting player. He's going to be an effective player. I don't view him as like one of those transcendent interior players that's going to take over the game and be a perennial Pro Bowler. Might be able to get there. I am thinking that the teams that are really going to probably be in play for him, Houston Texans down at the bottom of the first round, the Chicago Bears can have an interest down there. The teams at the bottom of the first round or the top of the second round are more likely where it lines up their needs, his talents, his value, kind of mesh. I think Kaden McDonald's a first round talent. We'll see if he gets in the first round, but I can guarantee you he's not going to be a top 10 player. What else we got? Okay, so we got a little pause on the questions. I have my own little things that we're going to talk about without doing it. We've already touched on the Tennessee Titans and why Sonny Styles could be in play there. But let's go to number 2, the New York Jets. The New York Jets are going to have to make a decision between Arville, Reese, and David Bailey. And of late, when you look at the mock drafts, there's been a lot of conversation and conviction that David Bailey is going to be the pick. I am in that camp with David Bailey being the pick at number 2. The reason why is we know exactly what we're getting with David Bailey. In these moments, when you're picking in the top 5, I hate to say it, but man, you want production over potential. And if you are hanging on by a thread like Aaron Glenn, you absolutely want production over potential. 14.5 sacks from David Bailey this year. We've seen him over a 4-year period, 3 at Stanford. Now this additional year at Texas Tech, we've seen him get better at his craft, and we've seen him dominate games with his speed, power, and explosiveness. His dip and rip move is a signature move, and he consistently gets home with that. Kind of reminds me of Mariano Rivera and the cutter. He's going to win, and you know what's coming, but you can't stop it. In Arville Reese, you have someone who is really like what I call a ball of clay. Doesn't have any bad habits. He doesn't have any habits, and so you're going to teach him from the ground up. The problem that you have is, does Arville Reese view himself as the teams view him? Meaning, he'll come in and people talk about, are you an off-ball linebacker or you're edge defender? If the team feels like he's an off-ball linebacker with an occasional responsibilities as an edge defender, that's a different conversation than being an edge defender full time. Arville Reese has to make it clear in terms of what he wants to do, how he feels he can best be utilized so everyone can heed his warnings and kind of build out packages from that. When we have talked to Arville Reese, he said, hey, man, I'm an edge defender. I want to play on the edges. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface on my potential, but I want to play on the edge. Well, a team drafting him has to take that in consideration, because the worst thing that you can do is take a player that you're using as a conversion and not fully make him commit to the position and him not fully committing to the position. So with Arville Reese, if you're drafting him, you better have a plan that aligns with his vision of himself. And then you got to stick to that plan once it gets going, because that's the only way he is going to maximize his talents. That's it. He's still a top 5 player in this draft. You just got to figure out what you're going to do with him. My next question goes right to the next team, the Arizona Cardinals. And the Arizona Cardinals have to make a tough decision. They got to make a decision on if they're building the team or if they're trying to sell tickets. If they're building the team, the biggest need that they have is at tackle. They got to find someone who can get it done on the edges. And so the conversation very early, Francis Mauigoa and Spencer Fano, because they were the 2 highest graded right tackle prospects. And depending on flavor, that would determine which one you like. But now there's some buzz about, hey, this offense isn't exciting. We got to compete in a very difficult division. We got to figure out how to make this work. Would we be better served to have a running back like a Jeremiah Love that can alleviate some of the pressure on the quarterback and help us find more points? When I think about Jeremiah Love in that situation, yeah, even though they signed Tyler Algier and they have James Conner, why not bring him in if you feel like he's that big of an upgrade over what you have? And without knowing who the quarterback is going to be, Jacoby Brissett has not reported to workouts. You get Gardner Minshew, he's dealing with the injury. You just don't know. But the Cardinals have to get this right, because they can talk about addressing the need, but man, the best player available is going to put them squarely in the crosshairs on Jeremiah Love. Are they bold enough to pull the trigger? And more importantly, are they good enough to make it work? 4, we talked about the Tennessee Titans, that conversation with Reese, Styles, and Love. Let's talk about the New York Giants. The New York Giants have 2 picks in the top 10. I talked about a little bit of the pressure that they will feel in this draft, having to get 2 done within the top 10. I'm going to say this trade puts a lot of it on Joe Shane to make sure that he has the right guys lined up on the board. And then it puts a lot of pressure on John Harbaugh, because these are the first picks of the John Harbaugh era. This comes down to not only what they do on the field, but it comes down to like how they are and the character they exhibit. These are going to be the players that reflect the new era coming into the locker room with the Giants? How does John Harbaugh make sure that the guys that he takes impacts that? I would say that I would anticipate the Giants not having a lot of risks, banking really heavily on the personality of the players, making sure that the players are bought in, that they have that stuff that they call their key components in New York right now: toughness, intelligence, grit, determination, all that other stuff. They got to make sure that they surround themselves with blue chip talents, with blue collar mentalities. If the Giants are able to do that, then they'll convert those two picks, 5 and 10, into really solid starters that make immediate contributions right away without knowing how the board falls before them. Man, you got to take the best player available, and you have to have various scenarios to be able to get it done when you are the Giants. Next team that is interesting to me. Let's take a question before we go. Cam wanted Stroud. I keep going back and forth on Peter Woods. I think he's a fit for Dennis Allen's scheme, but it's hard to love the 25 tape. Would that make you pause if you were working for the Bears? Great question. I think what you should do when you're an evaluator, you look at the last film, but you got to evaluate the entire body of work. What we don't know is we don't know how the new scheme impacted him, not only from an X's and O's standpoint, but in terms of what his role and responsibility was. If we're telling that our three technique is just a plugger, occupy multiple gaps and not get up the field, well, then that's what he's going to do. He's going to lay on blocks and come to command double teams and create opportunities for others. If we're asking him to get up the field and be a pass rusher, a shot wrecker, well, does he do that? Does he come off the ball with violence and force? Does he make people change the way that they go about their business because of his presence on the interior? That matters. That is why for Peter Woods, I see Peter Woods much like Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins has been a Pro Bowl player. Christian Wilkins had all of the similar things that we're getting from Peter Woods in terms of maybe a little different personality. But, man, when you turn it on and the lights are on and the popcorn is popping, he's going to make some plays. And Peter Woods does that. When I look at him, man, he has the best hand-to-hand combat skills of anybody. You then take that and put his speed to power ratio that he shows when he runs over people, and you think about the overall speed, quickness, and explosiveness, he checks off all the boxes everywhere. He is a really good player, and I don't know what went wrong in Indiana, but I do know they had a new coordinator, and sometimes a new coordinator asks you to do things and brain becomes the mush and you don't play the way that you should play. To me, I'm going to strike that as, look, I'm going to put that one off on I'll put the one off on the others at Clemson, Tom Allen and such, and say that this is still a really good player. We got to put him in a system that accentuates what he does well. And since we're talking about what people do well, let's talk about these odds on FanDuel Sportsbook. I am sitting here watching the numbers, and I got to tell you this, the odds on FanDuel Sportsbook to be a top 5 pick. We have David Bailey at minus 1,500. Jeremiah Love, minus 475. Sonny Styles at plus 110. We have Jordan Tyson, plus 320. I bet you we looked at it a week ago. Those odds were much better. You could have had a better deal on that. Francis Marinoa is sitting at plus 360. And coming up last, Caleb Downs, plus 450. If you're asking me to place a bet on which ones are going to be in the top 5, I say you can book David Bailey and Jeremiah Love. They're locked and loaded. They're gone. The next one to come off the board, I would say, this is tough. I think we're going to have to go with, let's go with Caleb Downs. My pick is on Caleb Downs. I'm going to take the plus. I'll make some money on this. I'm going to take the plus 450, and I'm going to cash out. And I'm going to have a great weekend when I win this thing on Caleb Downs, being able to get it. Let's go back, talk about some more little questions before I pop off here in like 5 minutes before I have to get out and go and do some more work. My overall thoughts on some of the playmakers and wide receivers in this draft class. There's been a lot of conversation. Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon. Of late, it's just been Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate. And people wonder, why is all of a sudden Jordan Tyson climbing ahead of Carnell Tate? This is what I'll tell you about Jordan Tyson. When you look at Jordan Tyson, he exudes all the qualities of a number 1 receiver. Outstanding route runner, great pass catcher, terrific after the catch. It's easy for him to make things happen, whether it's getting open one-on-one, hard coverage on the outside. He consistently wins, catching the ball in traffic, no fear, easily plucks it with his hands. So it's not an issue. You love that part of it. Carnell Tate, you love all the things that Carnell Tate brings to the position. Terrific route run, has really improved over his 3-year period. Really polished at the top of his route in terms of creating separation, willing and able to go across the middle of the field and make tough catches with everyone beating down on him. Terrific on the sideline in terms of being able to understand how to put your feet in bounds while watching the ball all the way in and having great concentration. He is a guy who has been a number 2 receiver at Ohio State, but some would say is 1A, 1B, that situation that he left, and that he's going to be a much better player in the pros than he even was in college. And that's saying something for someone that put the ball in the paint consistently for the Buckeyes. To me, this is where the pro comparisons come in. I liken Carnell Tate to Devontae Adams. I also liken Jordan Tyson to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'll leave it for you to decide which one you would want on your team. Devontae Adams, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. You can't go wrong either way. To me, that's the conversation that you're having. Jordan Tyson versus Carnell Tate. Which one do you want? I'll let you decide. Next up, if I was Howie Roseman, what would I do with the 23rd pick? What would be the first choice, second choice for 23 if they stay put? Interesting. Very interesting. First thing that you do if you're Howie Roseman, one, you don't have control on who's going to be in the cluster. You can anticipate who's going to be available, but you don't know. So you're coming to the event with an open mind and ready to shift based on any of the things that could happen. The Eagles have to get ready for the day that Lane Johnson no longer plays on the right side. So offensive tackle is certainly going to be in play. They did a really good job of stockpiling their roster. I would anticipate them taking one early. A.J. Brown is set to be traded away by the time we get to June 1st. That means you need someone else that can step in there and be a number 1 receiver. The issue is, can you really find that guy in the 20s? No, not in this class, because there's not a real true one when it comes to it. But what you can do is you can sit here and determine who's going to be best for us right now. How can we put this together as a committee situation? Remember, a few years ago when the Eagles went with Doug Peterson, they didn't have any notable names. I don't even know if they had a 1,000-yard receiver on the perimeter. If you're going to do it as a collective, then you got to make sure that all the pieces of the puzzle fit receiver-wise. They're going to be the same conversation that people always have at the bottom. People are going to throw out Denzel Boston being one. They'll throw out Casey Concepcion as a slot receiver, but that doesn't really make sense because you have Hollywood Brown and those guys in the fold. You're here, maybe some Omar Cooper in the mix. I don't know. To me, the Eagles have traditionally gone with bigs in the first round. I think that could be a very critical play. And also in the chat, Adam Exploits helps me out and says, hey, they need a safety and a guard also. Safety is a big position in that defense. You certainly need someone that's a great communicator, but more importantly, a playmaker. We can talk about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson years ago when he led to the Super Bowl. They missed those kind of playmakers in the middle, and a guard. Guard class is solid down there. You talk about Chase Basantis from Texas A&M. You talk about Emanuel Pregnon from Oregon. Those two guys could be in play if the Eagles elect to go that route. Final thing I think we should talk about when it comes to this draft class. People are talking about trading up and why you would trade up. Something that you want to keep your eye on draft night when it comes to people trading up and why they'll do it. Normally, you trade up because there's a specific player that you want, or there's a specific spot in the draft where you anticipate a run on a desired position taking place. As we're talking about this, understand that in 2027, scouting community views it as a class that is loaded with blue chip players, not only at quarterback, but at several marquee spots. You have to weigh the value of trading up to get someone in this year's class versus what could be had in next year's class if you stand pat. That is going to drive the conversation. That also may keep some people on the sideline because they don't want to mortgage their future and miss out on something that could be great down the road, trying to get a quick fix right now. Now, that was a quick fix for me, getting all this stuff out. I'm about to go and do a little TV on NFL Network where I'm going to talk about some of these things all over again. But make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, The Bucky Brooks Show. Make sure you subscribe to the Believe YouTube channel, all the cool things that me and my colleagues are doing on this. let's also try and grow this. Like kind of in and out, I want to make sure that we take care of it. And as we begin to see how the players are going to the teams, make sure you come back to the Bucky Brooks Show, because we're going to have all of the analysis starting Friday on what took place in the draft and over draft weekend. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'm out.